Hello everybody, welcome to the County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today, just 10 days before the election, the primary election takes place, we are going to take a look at voting, election security, and Utah's leading position as one of the first statewide states to convert to mail-in ballots. How safe are they? And how does that whole process work? Well, we'll look at it today on our show. Let's start with looking at the life of a ballot from the time it enters your mailbox to the time it is put into the system. With that story, this is Derek Dowsett.
You may not think about it, but a lot of work has gone into your ballot before you have ever received it. Long before the ballot arrives in the mail, the candidates for each race have to be verified and the ballot correctly printed according to your specific voting precinct. Boundaries for congressional, House, Senate, and school districts can vary. In larger counties, there may be dozens of different ballots printed for each election. The county clerk has to ensure that all that information is correct before the ballots are printed and mailed to you. The county clerk also maintains the integrity of the election through a process of checks and balances that verifies you as the voter, that each vote is only counted once, and who you vote for is kept confidential. John Whitaker, the clerk in Iron County, demonstrated the process they go through to ensure the fidelity of an election.
You know, the whole process is kind of fun. We often put in long hours for elections. Once it comes into our office, we cross-check the signature of the voter against the signature on file. It often surprises people. We check 100% of the ballots this way. We will remove the affidavit so that there's no identifying marks on the envelope. And those batches go through the rest of the process, which is the envelope is sliced open, and then at a separate step, the ballot is removed and laid flat so that it will go through the voting machine without problem, and then we'll tabulate it on the machine you see behind me. The other part of that is physical security and making sure that we have two people at all times handling the ballots.
I had imagined a system with more conveyor belts or automation, but it is still a very human-run process of verification, separation, opening, removing the ballots, and tabulation. So what happens when you fill in too many bubbles on your ballot?
The system will catch that there's an overvote or an unclear mark, or if there's a write-in. And in those cases, that information will go to the server, and we will, in groups of two, verify what the voter intent was. It's important to note that if you make a mistake on your ballot, it's okay. Just clarify with your writing and with words what your intent is. This one, not this one. If there is a race that you don't know about, or if you choose to abstain, then you can leave that blank. And that's okay too. The goal is to prevent voter fraud and to ensure ballot secrecy.
Elections vary slightly from county to county, but not by much.
Some of the counties have signature verification software. We have, 25,000 registered voters, and Salt Lake County has 500,000 registered voters. So, there's an economy of scale there that justifies some of those expenses. I personally like the hands-on approach that we're able to do with our size of county.
As the election officer of the county, the clerks in Utah take the utmost care in performing their duties to ensure an accurate tally of each and every vote. So, what is the most important part of the process?
Probably the signature verification is the number one step. I would actually say the number one step is that each of us as voters vote. We go to great lengths to make sure that each voter that's registered can, and so please fill out that ballot, be an informed voter, and for goodness sake, sign the affidavit and send it in.
For the county seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
Thanks, Derek. We will continue our conversation with our panel of experts from both the state and the county level when we continue here on the county seat covering the election process. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the county seat. We're having a conversation today about elections, ballots, and mail-in here in the state of Utah. Joining us for our conversation is the clerk auditor from Davis County, Curtis Koch, and we have a clerk from Millard County, Marki Rowley, And joining us from the Lieutenant Governor's Office, the Office of Elections, is Justin Lee. Thank you all for taking time to help people feel better at this pre-election moment. You don't have to go too far to hear all the stuff on the news and the different channels and on the social media about the fear nationwide about mail-in elections. There are all kinds of myths out there about voter fraud and everything. How secure are Utah's elections?
You know, I'm going to say they're very secure. Our voters here have been doing vote by mail for 8 years now. It's kind of been an organic process where different counties have joined in over the years. And no real big security issues have come up. Our counties have done a phenomenal job, you know, making it both secure and accessible to voters. What
are some of the checks and balances and things we do to make sure that we've covered it? Because it seems like, as I've covered this through the last decade on this show, every time we bring up the subject, it's amazing how well thought out the process is. So let's address some of those.
Yeah, I think as you look at security in elections, you look to the 4 pillars. You have, first of all, technology. Our technology is set up with pre-election testing. We have post-election audits. We have tracking of ballots. And so we have the technology component. Our systems are not connected to the internet. You cannot get into our systems from the internet. And that's a really important thing, because when we talk hacking, people automatically think, oh, they're going to come in. Well, our systems are separate. Then you have the pillar of elected officials. You have separate elected officials conducting elections through all 29 counties in the state. Then you have another separate elected official, the Lieutenant Governor's Office, overseeing those elections. The third pillar, you have the campaigns, who obviously have a vested interest. You have the media, who have a vested interest and do a great job of putting a microscope on the process. And then finally, your final pillar is the citizen. Did you get your ballot? If not, call your clerk. Did you mail your ballot in? Once you've mailed it, if you want, you can track it. Go to vote.utah.gov, put in your information, you can track your ballot and say, oh yes, it was received. And so those 4 pillars, when they're in place and everybody does their job, there's checks and balances from the citizens, through the elected officials, through the campaigns, and through the technology that we deploy.
You know, in the old days we had, the parties would put up election judges that would go to the polling place, and they would be there to kind of, both sides to say, okay, are we doing things the way we're supposed to be doing? In a mail-in world, how does that portion of the function get covered? I'm looking at you, Marki, because I want to give you a chance to say something. How do you do it in Millard County?
So each ballot comes with a return envelope where the voter signs it. So when a voter registers in our county, we take that information, put it in, we capture their signature, we put it in our statewide system where we're all have access to it. And then when we send out a ballot, they sign an affidavit on the yellow envelope that returns to our office. We take that signature and we match it to the signature that's in the system that when they registered, they signed. And if there are any discrepancies or any question, then we'll challenge that signature. We'll send an affidavit, make phone calls, reach out to that voter and let them know that there's a discrepancy with their signature and give them the opportunity to come in, present our office with picture ID and sign that in front of us.
How does that process, is it an automated process? Do you do it by hand? Does somebody actually just check the two, or is there like scanners that say, well, these aren't close enough that it flags them? How does that work?
So in our smaller county, we require 2 people, so 1 person, and we just take that signature, that's the wet signature on the envelope, and then we pull up the signature. When you scan in, there's a barcode on the label. When it comes back, you scan it in and it automatically pulls up that signature. And then we just compare that signature to the voter signature that's in the system. My office requires 2 people to do that, and then if there's any discrepancy, they can't agree, they can't see enough similarities, then we challenge it.
Similar in a large county, Davis County, we look at every signature.
So it actually has human eyes on it?
Absolutely. And if there is a discrepancy, then we elevate it up to more senior staff, and we look at we pull more signatures in that could be comparable. And if they don't match, we're reaching out, just like Marki, to the voter through email, phone. If we have to, we'll send another letter saying, hey, there's difference in this signature. We need to know, did you mail this ballot in? Now, depending on the situation, we do have people contact us and say, yes, I did. We verify their information, some personal information that they actually cast this ballot. A variety of reasons. Sloppy handwriting. Maybe somebody has a stroke and their signature changes significantly. So yes, every ballot is reviewed. Not every ballot, but every envelope with signature, every signature is reviewed.
So as a good citizen, is it a good idea if you develop arthritis in your right hand to go in and re-register to vote so your signature matches better? I mean...
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, to say honestly, yeah, that's probably a great thing to do. Do we expect most people to think of that? No, not really. And that's exactly the reason we have this cure process that Marki and Curtis are talking about. You know, we know people break their arms, get arthritis, change their signature for whatever reason over the years. And so, you know, there's been people who are concerned about fraud. The actual bigger concern we've had from people is, are we not counting ballots we should be counting? And that's another place where the counties, I think, have hit a very good balance and working with the legislature to make sure that we're able to reach out to voters to say, this doesn't look like your signature. Is this really you? Did something happen? Because we want to make sure we're counting every ballot we should. Honestly, it's in some ways the bigger concern than are we kicking out ballots we shouldn't.
It's not our intent to disqualify a signature. It's our intent to make sure that is the signature of that person, because we don't want somebody signing.
Okay, I know my viewers, and I've got one last question in this segment I have to ask. Have either of you, or at the state level, encountered a vote that you snagged in your process that was not a legitimate or proper vote?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, are you saying like somebody signed someone else's vote? Or?
Yeah, like a stolen ballot or something like that, or?
Actually, this last election, I did, and I have no idea what the intent was, but somebody signed somebody else's ballot, and it wasn't even in the same household. We do have, in our county, husbands will sign their wife's envelope, and so they're just swapped. And so we, you know, if we have the two envelopes and the wife has signed the one that has the husband's name on it, or the husband signed the wife's, and they're both there, then we go ahead and count it.
Yeah, and same thing, yes, every election we have husbands signing for wives, wives signing for husbands or children. And we view that as a great opportunity to reach out to them and educate them on you can't do that in a nice way.
In essence, Justin, you're saying that the system of checks and balances is working across the state.
That's exactly, yeah, what we're saying is, does this happen? Yes, absolutely. And we know it happens because we're catching it. I think a very troubling statement would be if we say, no, we're not catching everything, every single ballot is going through. That would be very troubling to me. But no, we are catching stuff, we're double checking, we're making sure that the right people are signing those, and we're not seeing any kind of widespread, you know, systemic fraud here. We are seeing, you know, spouses sometimes signs for spouses, sometimes just flipping the envelope as they're filling them out of the table, but not seeing anything with, you know, a lot of stolen ballots or people trying to rig the system somehow.
And think about the fourth pillar, the citizen. If you don't get your ballot, if somebody takes it out of your mailbox, call us. We want to know, because we can spoil that ballot and we can get you your ballot. We want to give every voter the opportunity to exercise their constitutional right.
Okay, very good. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll pick up our conversation and talk about the security of having elections be very local in their processing. We'll be right back on the county seat. Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about elections, election security, and a mail-in ballot system here in the state of Utah, which has now, I think, wasn't Utah County the last county to switch over?
Actually, the last two counties to switch over are Emery County and Carbon County, which we just picked up this last March for the presidential primary.
All right. So we've got an entire state running on mail-in ballots with a long history. I do want to talk about the fact that the systems within the counties, it's not really a uniform system that your office dictates. You've got some guidelines. How does this work? How How do you leave it up to the counties?
You know, I mean, the statute is set up in such a way that has the lieutenant governor as the chief election officer for the state, and then he hires people like me to help him do that job. But then the county clerks are independently elected officials with their own statutory duties and responsibilities. So a lot of it's statutory. You know, it's not us sitting up there at state and saying we think the county should do this or not do this. Most of it's a statutory construction. And what we have is a very good relationship with both the county clerks and the legislature that allows us to work together to make sure the laws are in the right place. And then we've worked really hard over the years to make sure we have a good relationship with the county. So we can call it pretty much any county and have a good discussion. If we have issues, we can bring it to them. If they have issues, they bring it to us. And communication is really, really key there.
I like to think of it as if you were building a building. The Lieutenant Governor's office acts as the building inspector. They come in, make sure we're doing what we should by statute and law in elections. But because we are so different, we have different sizes, you know, Davis County might need an outlet over here, and so we build our system to do that. Millard might need to change the pitch of the roof. Great, as long as it's within the state statute and the building inspector or the lieutenant governor's office is good with it, then we move forward.
Justin, do you think that creates security and having that individuality to make it more secure and safe election?
It does. From a security perspective, it's a really big advantage we have, not just here in Utah, but across the country. I mean, if you imagine, you know, Curtis brought this up earlier, the election systems, at least the voting systems where you actually cast your ballot and ballots are counted, aren't tied to the internet. They're air-gapped. So if someone really wanted to hack that, they would not only have to hack the individual machines behind lock and key and camera in a county, they'd have to do that in 29 different counties, or at least a large enough number of counties to make a huge difference. So it's a built-in security feature that kind of this disaggregated system gives us. It's a big advantage.
So I have great confidence. I know most all the clerks in the state and have met them during the 10 years. I have great confidence personally that we run good elections. But is a mail-in ballot system, could it be abused if you had a rogue county somewhere in a state that, you know, Ohio or Pennsylvania or somewhere? Could a mail-in ballot system have problems if it weren't regulated the way we do?
I think anything could have problems. Nothing's immune from a problem. I think that with our state, like Justin said, we do communicate. We communicate with each other. We communicate with the Lieutenant Governor's office.
I guess I didn't really say that. Is a mail-in ballot system any more susceptible to manipulation or misuse than any other system?
I don't think so. I think every system has its own issues. When we went to the touchscreen voting machines, you know, 14, 15 years now at this point, there were a lot of people that said, these are problematic. You know, these can be hacked, these can flip votes, all kinds of things. And then people got used to them over the years and they're fine with it. I think a lot of the questions with mail-in voting are similar. It's a newer thing. People have questions about it. Are there issues? Sure, there's issues with everything. I think Marki said that perfectly, but there's no greater issues than you'd find with another system.
I would agree with that. The checks and balances are in place to ensure that this is a secure method to vote. The foundation of our democracy is having confidence that the people that were elected truly were elected. And so that's something that the clerks take very serious. It's something the Lieutenant Governor's office on a federal level, the Department of Justice takes this very serious. There are checks and balances throughout the system, and whatever system you're using, we use vote by mail. It's very convenient, very helpful for our citizens. We put the checks and balances in place, and we disperse the power. That's the beauty of the system, the dispersed system. And throughout the United States, there is value in having the system set up the way that we have done it in our country.
Excellent.
And I think if I can jump, you know, with any system, there's also a risk and reward. There's some risk with vote by mail. There's some risk with anything else. The reward is, though, we're seeing greater turnout. For primary elections, for municipal elections, more people are participating in democracy, if I can smash those words together. But, you know, with that, that's a reward. We're seeing more people participate. And, you know, I think we discussed this a little bit earlier, or maybe it was before we were on camera, that this gives us a chance to look at some of the issues more. If I get my ballot and I get down to the bottom and I have no idea what School Bond 3 is about, if I get into a voting booth, I don't have a lot of time to research that. If I get it in the mail, I've got 3 weeks where I can go find out what School Bond 3 is about and be a more informed voter. So we've got some really big rewards with this system.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll pick up for some final thoughts here on elections and security in the system, and we'll be right back with the county seat. Welcome back to the county seat. We've been talking about mail-in ballots, and in particular interest this year being a post-COVID world that we live in. What's different about this year as we've been doing mail-in for a long time?
So as of today, voter registration is done for this particular election. There will be no same-day voter registration. But if you still want to engage and you're a registered voter, reach out to your clerk. Get in touch with your county clerk. If you have accessibility issues that need to be addressed, reach out to your clerk. All the clerks are anxious to assist voters.
And we are going to make accommodations for those who, because there's no in-person voting, anybody who has issues or a hard time voting their mailed ballot, they contact us. We'll make arrangements for them.
Okay, is there any in-person voting at all?
There's 7 counties who are doing drive-through voting or drive-up voting, and it'll be limited. If someone lost their ballot, needs a ballot replacement, they can drive through, they'll be able to stay in their car and get something like that. But nobody should expect to go to a regular polling place and have a normal experience. Nothing's normal right now.
If you haven't received your ballot now, contact your clerk's office.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Get a hold of your clerk.
Okay, yeah, all right. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, local government is where your life happens, so you need to be involved, you need to be engaged, and particularly right now, as many elections are determined in the primaries across the state of Utah as opposed to the general election. So be involved, be part of the solution, and we will see you next week on the county seat. Thank you for watching the County Seat. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications to keep up to date on the program and happenings around Utah.